Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Ashbourne sat silently in the back seat of a sleek, black car, moving through the glimmering and loud streets of Vegas. His eyes were fixed on his phone, where a live feed had been running for a few minutes now. The Joker's chaos was already in full swing. On screen, the Justice League raced against time, disabling bombs scattered across Vegas, on bridges, in parks, near and inside casinos, while having to fight the superpowered individual Joker freed from Cadmus. Each success came with mounting tension, not knowing if they will be able to stop all bombs in time. And with the Joker watching them closely, it only added to that pressure. Ashbourne watched it all, calm and still as ever, the flashing images reflected in his gaze. The car slowed. "We're here," the driver said. Ashbourne stepped out of the car, and before him loomed the TV station where the Joker had claimed for his party. Ashbourne already knew what awaited him inside. He glanced at his watch, 6:55 p.m., then entered the building. The halls were empty. Clearly the Joker had either killed the people or tied them somewhere out of the way. But Ashbourne didn't care much about that. Soon he could hear the faint sound of laughter echoed ahead, high-pitched, deranged. Finally, he stepped into the studio. Cameras were pointing from all directions at the center of the stage, where a lone figure sat, Ace, a young, pale girl in a simple black and white cloth, still as a statue, her eyes staring unblinking and void of emotion, fixed straight ahead at the camera. The Joker stood in front of her, cackling to the camera like a game show host on the brink of collapse. When he noticed Ashbourne entering, he paused, then grinned. Ashbourne offered a slight wave, leaned casually to one side, and gestured for him to continue. "Don't let me interrupt." The Joker stared for a beat, then howled with laughter. Now that's the spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, the real guest of honor has arrived. He turned the camera, angling it so it now showed Ace fully. The viewers were trapped by Ace's power, but they were still able to comprehend words and what was going on. Across the country, tens of millions who were watching the live stream were staring helplessly with eyes wide, expressions locked, minds blank. Ace's gaze reached through the screen. Her power didn't just manipulate reality, it rewrote perception. Those exposed were paralyzed, trapped in mental prison of their own hallucinations. "And there's little Ace," the Joker crooned, walking a slow circle around her. Little Ace, born cursed. Born with power. And what did they do? The government kidnapped her and threw her in a cage. Experimented with her. Said she was dangerous. So they made her wear a headband. They turned her into a sweet little puppet, didn't they? Made her quiet, obedient. Because gods forbid she hurt someone by accident. Ha! His grin widened. You see, her power lets her alter your reality. One look, and you see what she wants you to see. For most people, that's madness. Terror. You can't even look away from her now, can you? He tilted his head, laughing again. "Oh, don't worry, I'm not affected. I'm already mad." He tapped his skull. "Upstairs? Lights out, baby." Then he turned to Ashbourne. "But enough foreplay. For today's big finale, we have one last guest." He theatrically bowed. "Ashbourne? My good buddy? Step into the spotlight. The stage is yours." Ashbourne stepped forward confidently in slow, deliberate steps. The Joker aimed the camera so that both Ashbourne and Ace were in frame. Ashbourne smirked, eyes on the girl. "You really pulled off your biggest stunt yet," he said coolly. The Joker's grin sharpened. "Of course, and I wanted a little heart-to-heart with you after the last 2 times before the curtain falls." The Joker looked at Ace with a glint in his eyes and a wide smile. He said, "Acey, why not give him a piece of you mind?" Ace's gaze shifted for the first time. She looked directly at Ashbourne. There was silence in the room for a few seconds, then nothing happened. The Joker's grin melted into a baffled frown. His eyes darted between Ace and Ashbourne, clearly not comprehending the lack of reaction. Ace, still seated, was staring right at Ashbourne, unblinking, intense, but Ashbourne was perfectly fine. ACA? The Joker's voice cracked with uncertainty. "Juice up, sweetheart." Still nothing. Ashbourne slowly tilted his head, still smiling, as he drew a gun from his coat and aimed it lazily at the Joker. "Am I the only one having a strong sense of déjà vu?" The Joker blinked rapidly, gears turning but finding no traction. Ashbourne is still smiling like usual. Why are you not going crazy? The Joker asked, clearly confused. Good question, Ashbourne replied. I guess we just confirmed I'm also insane, but again, who needs sanity? It is overrated, don't you think? The Joker took a nervous step back. On second thought, he muttered, inviting you is not the brightest idea. Ashbourne didn't reply. He simply extended his free hand, palm up, fingers twitching in a beckoning gesture. The Joker stared at it, bewildered. My souvenir, Ashbourne said calmly. The dagger. You have one. Hand it over. The Joker's eye twitched violently. He reluctantly pulled a small knife from his coat and tossed it toward Ashbourne. Ashbourne caught it, inspected it, then looked back with unimpressed eyes. This is just a regular knife, he raised an eyebrow. Where's the good stuff? Darkness crept into the Joker's face. Where am I supposed to keep getting unique ones? I'm a homicidal maniac, not a treasure collector. Ashbourne sighed, rolling his eyes. This trip was for nothing, then. A sudden slam of a door burst the tension. Harley Quinn stormed into the studio, eyes wild with fury. You slimy, cheating clown, she shouted. You were getting too close to that girl. I saw it, picking her over me. I've been there through every shootout and asylum break, and this is how you treat me. She stopped mid-rant as she noticed Ashbourne pointing a gun at the Joker. Ashbourne looked at her. You want a moment alone with him? Harley blinked, then nodded furiously. Ashbourne walked past the Joker and handed the gun to Harley. I am rooting for you. He's all yours. Without a second of hesitation, Harley stomped toward the Joker with a gun in hand, still yelling, You lowlife, purple-suited dirtbag. I broke my bat for you. The Joker backpedaled fast, raising his hands. Hey, Charles. There's a misunderstanding here. Really? You're one of a kind. My special cupcake. There's a bond between us. Like, Harley's eyes softened, suddenly hopeful. Like what, Puddin'? Say it. The Joker's manic grin suddenly twisted into a glare. Like you brought Batman here. Then, without warning, he punched Harley across the face, knocking her sideways. Ashbourne didn't move. His hands were now in his pockets as he stood calmly, watching like an entertained patron in a theater. The Joker marched forward. Come on out, bats. I know you're here. From the shadows above, a blur dropped like a hawk. Crack. Batman landed squarely on the Joker, knocking him to the floor. The clown gasped, limbs flailing. Axley, the Joker shrieked. This one's sane. Do it. Ace's gaze slowly turned to Batman. The Dark Knight staggered as it hit him. His movements slowed. His breath quickened. He raised his hands as strange visions flooded his mind, hallucinations clawing at his sanity. Then, bang! The shot echoed through the studio. Batman groaned and collapsed to his knees, then to the floor. The Joker sat up, eyes wide. His grin vanished entirely as he stared at the fallen bat. Then slowly, his gaze turned to Harley, who stood a few feet away. Gun raised, arms trembling, eyes confused. Oops, she mumbled. Then she slumped to the side, asleep from the Joker's punch. Even Ashbourne's eyes widened in disbelief. He didn't plan or intend to repeat this again. The Joker was confused, and then spoke. What the hell? Why does this keep happening? Ashbourne, what the hell did you do? Well, he said, stunned, that wasn't me. He lifted both hands slowly. No one can blame me this time. It was your sidekick. The Joker stood up and said, It was your damn gun again, as he pointed angrily at the sleeping Harley. Ashbourne walked forward to the Joker slowly. When the Joker turned around, he found Ashbourne's hand extended into his jacket pocket, pulling a golden headband from it. The Joker's face changed as Ashbourne said, Well, what do we have here? The Joker's eyes snapped to Ice, who was no longer sitting. Ace was standing. Her eyes narrowed dangerously at the Joker, and then slowly she began walking. The Joker chuckled nervously, stepping backward. Hey now, AC, let's all calm down. This is just a misunderstanding, really. Ace's voice was cold and deliberate. I don't fear you, she said. I know what it means to make people afraid. There was no humor in her tone, no madness like his. Just quiet, resolute truth. The Joker kept stepping back, sweat forming on his painted brow. Ainsley, sweetie, listen, I only meant to... She didn't blink. She didn't slow. And when his back finally met the cold wall behind him, the Joker dropped into a crouch, shielding his face with his arms. Don't hurt me, he squealed. Ace stopped just a foot away from him. She knelt slowly and reached a hand gently toward his head. Her voice was soft now. Don't be afraid. She patted his head. The Joker, peeking up with a nervous smile, tried to play it off. "That's my good little girl." But the moment their eyes met, he screamed. His limbs went rigid and he collapsed to the ground, eyes wide open, drool spilling from his mouth. He twitched once, then went still. Ashbourne watched silently, the headband still dangling from his fingers. Ace turned. Her eyes locked onto Ashbourne as she walked slowly toward him. "You are different," she said, voice low. "You don't fear me. You don't care what could happen." Ashbourne met her gaze with a calm smile. "You're just a normal person with a unique trick. Should I be afraid, like the other idiots out there?" Ace didn't respond, she just turned and walked away, heading toward the broken studio doors. Ashbourne's voice followed her. "If you need help, or someone to talk to, reach out to me. I'm Ashbourne Black. I'm usually in Metropolis." Ace paused at the door. She didn't look back. Ashbourne turned toward the main camera. He looked directly into the lens. "This is the TV station on Vegas 16th Street, he said clearly. "Someone come pick them up." He gestured loosely to the scene behind him. Batman still groaning on the ground, the Joker out cold and twitching, Harley Quinn snoring gently on her side. Then Ashbourne pocketed the headband, turned, and walked out, leaving behind the wreckage of 3 very different knockouts. Ashbourne stepped out of the TV station, the cool night breeze ruffling his coat slightly. He walked calmly, hands in his pockets, as if he hadn't just witnessed one of the most surreal nights of the year. Before he could take another step, a red blur zipped into existence before him. The Flash. He scanned Ashbourne up and down. Ashbourne didn't even blink. "They are inside." The Flash stared at him in silence for a beat, then wordlessly dashed into the building. Ashbourne took another step when the air above him split with a sonic boom. Superman landed with a heavy thud, his eyes narrowing as he looked Ashbourne over. "What are you doing here?" Superman asked, voice firm. Ashbourne didn't even slow down as he walked past him toward the sleek black car parked nearby. "I was invited to a party," he replied flatly. "Turned out to be a lame one." Superman floated after him, arms folded, frown deepening. "You knew about this?" Ashbourne glanced at him with a sideways smile. "All the Joker told me was to be here at 7 p.m. for a party. That's exactly what I did." He opened the car door and paused. "Now if you'll excuse me, I'm heading back to Metropolis. Feel free to visit my office if you need anything." Without another word, he stepped inside the car, closed the door, and it pulled away from the curb, leaving Superman standing there speechless. Inside the building, heroes rushed to clean up the mess. But outside, the narrative had already changed. The millions who had been trapped in the live broadcast, their minds caught in the power of Ace's gaze, had seen everything. They had watched as the Justice League scrambled to disable bombs that turned out to be nothing but distractions. They had seen Batman brought to his knees by a stray bullet from Harley Quinn, of all people, and then unceremoniously passed out. But more importantly, they had seen Ashbourne. He had faced Ace without hesitation or fear. He had kept his calm, turned the Joker's game upside down, got his souvenir, and left with the same calm swagger with which he arrived. The public's verdict was swift. It wasn't the Justice League who had saved them. It was Ashbourne Black. And back in the car, as the neon lights of Vegas airport drew closer, Ashbourne's phone buzzed. A message from Rex lit up the screen. "Your acquaintance was the Joker, of all people. How could you go to him on your own feet alone?" Ashbourne sighed and let it slide for now. Another buzz. This one from Amanda Waller. "Did you know what the Joker was planning? Why didn't you stop Ace if you were immune to her?" He shook his head with a small smirk. Not surprised by Director Waller, always authoritative and cares only about the objective. More messages followed. From Gizmo, Mammoth, Billy, even Victor and Nora. Concerned, worried, and confused. All of them were worried about him. Ashbourne leaned his head back against the seat and stared at the city lights passing by through the window. This was the price he paid for keeping his powers hidden, for acting like he was just another clever, reckless man in a suit rather than the monster that lurked behind the smile. They all cared, and because they cared, they are worried. He couldn't be annoyed with them. It would be just a hypocrisy. In the Batcave, Superman, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, and the Flash stood silently before the Batcomputer, while Batman, seated in his chair, glowered at the floor like it had personally offended him. He didn't want them there. He never liked anyone in his cave. It was his space. But this time he loathed their presence. Bruce Wayne, the Batman, one of the founding pillars of the Justice League, the silent guardian of Gotham, the man who had stood shoulder to shoulder with gods and monsters, had been reduced to a punchline. 3 times. The first, a misfired gun. The second, a deflected bullet. And the third, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn. With a sleepy oops, it wasn't even the pain that got to him. It was the broadcast. More than 70 million people witnessed it. Not on some obscure footage tucked away in a villain's lair. Live. Public. Immortalized. He was the Batman, and he was humiliated 3 times. He didn't say it. Wouldn't say it out loud, but deep down, he suspected Ashbourne had a hand in at least the first 2. No proof. Just a nagging feeling. And the third. He couldn't blame that one on Ashbourne. Harley had pulled the trigger, but somehow that made it worse. His teammates looked at him with concern, and that only made the humiliation worse. Bruce's mind shifted back to the real issue, the one his pride was trying to avoid. Ashbourne. Ashbourne Black knew something. At the very least, he knew the Joker was planning something. Instead of alerting the League or the police or anyone, he just showed up, alone, with a smile. Superman was the first to speak, arms crossed. The Joker has a grudge against Ashbourne. He went out of his way to invite him. That could happen again. Bruce's eye twitched, though his face remained cold. Of course it could happen again. Wonder Woman stepped forward, voice stern. Ashbourne Black's actions were irresponsible and reckless. He should be punished. By the laws of man, he's an accomplice. He withheld vital information. The Flash raised a hand. Hold on. He didn't know what was going on, or the scale of it. He was just invited to a place at a given time and showed up. That's not a crime. A pause. Then he added with a thoughtful tilt of the head, and I don't think this'll happen again. He was there for the dagger. He was clearly disappointed by the Joker's normal knife. A moment of silence followed. That was the thing that troubled them the most. Ashbourne was disappointed by a mass-murdering maniac's knife, not the madman's show that was going on. Even Bruce paused, recalling the stupid reason Ashbourne went there in the first place. He leaned forward, shadows creeping across his face as he stared at the Bat-computer. What concerns me is how he avoided Ace's power. Everyone's focus was on him. Bruce continued, everyone was affected. Even you, Clark. The Joker, for all his insanity, nearly went into a vegetative state. If not for John. Martian Manhunter gave a slow nod of confirmation. Bruce stood. We need to pay Ashbourne a visit. Find out what he's hiding. Superman frowned slightly. Bruce, we can't just interrogate someone for not being affected by something we don't understand. He's never done anything wrong. He's helped, even if he's unconventional. I agree, Flash said, arms crossed. It could just be another magical artifact he's using. I mean, he clearly enjoys collecting weird stuff. Wonder Woman folded her arms, eyes narrowing. But Bruce has a point. We don't know what he's hiding. What if it's something dangerous, and it could also help countering Ace when we find her? The heroes were clearly divided on what to do with Ashbourne. But before they could continue, the soft but deliberate sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the staircase. All heads turned as Alfred Pennyworth, the ever-composed butler of Wayne Manor, walked down the stairs with a small package in his hands. He gave a slight nod to the gathered heroes. Apologies for the interruption, but I thought Master Bruce might want to see this immediately. Bruce arched a brow. What is it? A package, sir. Delivered just now from Mr. Ashbourne Black. Those 3 words froze the room. All at once, Superman's gaze sharpened. Wonder Woman turned to face Alfred fully, and Flash tilted his head with barely restrained curiosity. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he looked to Clark. What's inside? He asked quietly. Clark peered through the packaging with his X-ray vision and frowned. A metal box and a letter in an envelope. I can't see the box content. That made everyone raise their guard. Flash's grin crept across his face. If you're worried about the contents, I can open it. I move faster than anything in there, just in case it's a trick. Bruce remained still, calculating, analyzing. Then, after a pause, he nodded. Be careful. Alfred approached and handed the package to Flash, who zipped a few feet away from the group. In a blink, the envelope was open, and he cleared his throat theatrically. All right, let's see. His voice echoed in the silence as he read. Dear Bruce, it is lamentable that you keep experiencing groin-related accidents in my presence, and it is quite concerning for the Wayne family future if this continues. I would have suggested you take a break to breathe in air or head to some sperm bank to have a backup plan, but I doubt you would do either of those of your free will. So I made a prototype for the second best solution I can offer to keep your biological tool intact. It is made by the best material engineers to ensure optimal protection while keeping you comfortable and without limiting your mobility. Regards, Ashbourne Black. The Batcave was dead silent for a heartbeat. Then Flash opened the box. He gasped. His hands trembled as he pulled the item from inside, desperately biting his lip to contain a laugh. The object gleamed under the Batcave lights, catching the attention of everyone present. It was a metallic pair of underwear crafted like advanced armor, sleek and oddly flexible, but undeniably shaped like a pair of pants with a ridiculous-looking bulge in the front. Something between a medieval codpiece and futuristic exo-armor. Flash turned it in his hands, then slowly pulled the sides apart. The whole thing expanded elastically, stretching and snapping back into shape. He choked back a laugh. It feels like elastic metal. I think it might actually be wearable. Superman raised an eyebrow. Wonder Woman blinked once. Martian Manhunter said nothing, but looked mildly impressed. And Bruce's face darkened like a brewing storm. His voice, low and cold, cut through the awkward stillness. I am paying Ashbourne a visit. Superman didn't argue. Flash, still shaking with silent laughter, gave a thumbs up. No one said another word. Ashbourne had angered Batman. Ashbourne Black leaned back in his chair, a bemused smile curling his lips as he studied the two figures standing in his office, Superman and Batman. The air in the room was filled with unspoken tension. His gaze shifted downwards and lingered just a little too long on Batman's lower half before he let out a theatrical sigh. It seems, Ashbourne said with a wry note, my gift wasn't to your liking after all. Batman's voice was cold. Stop the jokes and silly plays, Ashbourne. You knew about the Joker, and you hid it. Ashbourne's smile didn't falter. I haven't done anything against the law, he replied smoothly. And last I checked, I don't answer to you. If you're upset about arriving late to the party, he gave a slow shrug. Do better next time. Batman's eyes narrowed dangerously, but Ashbourne remained completely unfazed. He stood, walking leisurely over to a sleek bar cabinet against the side of the room. The click of glass against wood echoed as he opened it. I had this installed recently, he said, voice casual. People keep dropping by, uninvited or otherwise. Might as well make it hospitable. What would you gentlemen like to drink? Batman's voice cut through the room like frost. You think this is funny? I do, Ashbourne said instantly, reaching for a bottle without so much as a backward glance. A sharp thunk rang out as a batarang suddenly struck the bottle in his hand, shattering it. Glass and golden liquid cascaded to the floor. Ashbourne merely raised an eyebrow and looked at the ruined bottle with vague amusement, then tossed the remnants aside with a clink. I take it you are not in mood for any drink, he said calmly. But that was uncalled for. If it is an intimidation tactic, it doesn't work on me. Batman stepped forward, the tension in his body coiled and ready to strike again. But Superman placed a firm hand on his shoulder, halting him. Batman stared at Superman for a moment, then relented for now. Superman turned toward Ashbourne. Aside from the Joker, we have another question. How did you resist Ace's power? Ashbourne, unfazed, casually grabbed another bottle, poured a drink, and took a sip before responding. A little trick I picked up, he said. Doesn't concern you. You can't replicate it anyway. But if it helps, think of it as me being extra crazy. Batman's eyes narrowed again. And the source of your magical items? Ashbourne didn't look up. You're awfully concerned with me today, Bruce. I could give you 100 lies if that would make you feel better. But again, none of this concerns you. Batman took a slow step forward, his voice lowering. Do you think you're untouchable? He asked. We'll find the answers one way or another. It's just a matter of how hard you want to make it for yourself. Now standing only 2 feet away from Ashbourne, Batman's presence was like a shadow growing over the room. Ashbourne finally looked up and laughed, not nervously, but with genuine amusement, shaking his head like a teacher bemused by a child's tantrum. That laughter only added fuel to Batman's burning anger. Without warning, Batman struck. His fist landed squarely on Ashbourne's face, making him stumble a few steps back. Batman, Superman barked, frowning. But Batman didn't care. His voice, cold as winter, echoed through the room. You're not untouchable. You are just a fool playing around. When we take your money and your luck, what's left? Ashbourne, now facing the floor, stood in still silence. For the first time in a long while, Ashbourne felt something shift inside himself. That punch, it hadn't truly hurt him, but it annoyed him. This was the first time in this life someone had laid a hand on him. Then he looked up. His smile was gone. His voice was quiet, emotionless. When you do that, Ashbourne will remain. But what about you, Bruce? The air grew colder. What remains after that? Ashbourne said, Nothing. You will have no value left in the world. His words received no reaction from Batman, just silent staring as if not even worth acknowledging. For a moment, Ashbourne considered ending the hero, but then Ashbourne's smile returned. But this time, it was twisted, crooked, cold, and brimming with malice. Fine, he said in an eerily amused tone. I will play, but first I will make it fair. Something about Ashbourne screamed malice, and the two heroes felt it. Batman stood his ground, but his face turned cautious. Superman spoke, trying to diffuse the situation. Ashbourne. Superman's lips had barely parted to speak when Ashbourne raised his right arm without warning. A soft hiss, a metallic click. Then a missile rocketed forward, straight at Batman. Bruce ducked just in time, the projectile missing him by inches. His cape flared behind him as he charged forward to tackle Ashbourne, but Ashbourne didn't retreat. His leg whipped up with sudden speed, catching Batman in the face and sending him staggering to the right. Simultaneously, the missile reached Superman. He didn't move to dodge, it was instinct. A lifetime of durability making him think it was unnecessary. The explosion wasn't fire or shrapnel, it was worse. A dense cloud of green mist burst out in a pulse surrounding him. Superman's face twisted in agony as the kryptonite took hold. His knees buckled, the once invincible man of steel crashing to the ground with a strangled breath. Batman flipped backward to recover from the kick, his body moving on reflex, but a second missile whistled through the air and struck him in the back mid-movement. The impact knocked him across the room. He groaned as pain flared through his torso, armor straining to hold together. But before he could even hit the ground fully, a third missile found him, right in the side. Boom. A second explosion erupted, smoke and fire swallowing Batman as he hit the ground hard and slid to a stop near the office door. His suit sparked. His cape was torn. Blood trickled from under his cowl. Ashbourne hadn't moved from his spot. He stood silently, watching. On one side, Superman writhed, struggling for breath, choking on the kryptonite dust filling the air. On the other, Batman lay bloodied and unmoving, barely meters from the entrance. The door burst open. Rex stumbled in, his face pale as a ghost. His eyes snapped to the battered figure of Batman in front of him, then to Superman lying broken and weakened near Ashbourne's desk. He froze. Uncle Rex, Ashbourne's voice cut through the smoke with unnatural calm. Please call the police. Say there was a murder attempt. Move. Now. Rex's throat moved, trying to speak, but no words came. After a heartbeat of hesitation, he turned and bolted down the hall. Ashbourne pulled out his phone. He dialed. Lex, he said calmly, bring your press companies to Shadow Corp immediately. You're about to get the perfect opportunity to ruin the images of Superman and Batman. He hung up before Lex could even respond. On the other end, Lex Luthor blinked in confusion, staring at his phone, but after a moment, he rose. Ashbourne had never lied to him, never tricked him. That was reason enough to move. Ashbourne made another call, this one to Amanda Waller. I have a situation, he said curtly. Superman and Batman are in my office. One's crawling on the floor, the other is unconscious. This is your chance to put a leash on the Justice League. Prepare to make use of it. Amanda Waller didn't even hesitate. Within a minute, her agents were on their way to find what was going on. Ashbourne lowered his phone and looked out the large glass window of his office, watching the city below. His smile returned, and this time there was no humor in it. Regardless of the reasons or his own actions, he won't let someone walk away after this, and he knew exactly how to deal with them. He didn't live this long in vain. The world watched with wide eyes and bated breath as every major news channel displayed the same jarring footage, images of Batman and Superman beaten and bloodied, being escorted by stunned police officers out of the Shadow Corp. Breaking news, one anchor declared. Billionaire genius and Shadow Corp CEO Ashbourne Black was the victim of an attempted murder today by none other than Batman and Superman. The heroes, once praised as protectors, are now being dragged by authorities. Ashbourne Black has announced he will be pressing charges. Across the screens, a video snippet played on loop. Superman coughing violently and can't even stand. Batman unconscious and bloody being carried away. The footage ended with police confused faces, still wary as if expecting the two to suddenly wake and retaliate. With Lex Luthor pulling strings behind the scenes, subtle narratives wormed their way into the headlines. Have the world's greatest heroes grown too arrogant? Gods among us, or tyrants? Justice League protectors or potential overlords? Commentators, with practice concern, debated over the desk. They answered to no government, no oversight. What happens when they disagree with humanity's choices? Do they simply take control? Across the globe, trust in the Justice League trembled. In the heart of the Watchtower, alarms buzzed and members gathered. Within seconds, the Flash, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter were gone, streaking toward the Earth below. The trio wanted to meet with their comrades, but they were met with tight security and an unusual atmosphere. Civilians recording with their phones, news vans lining the streets, and an air of disbelief. When they were finally allowed inside, they were brought to the security room where footage was played without edits. Their expressions hardened with each second. Batman's punch, Ashbourne's missiles, Superman collapsing in kryptonite mist, the unmistakable chaos. Why would they even do this? The Flash murmured. Unable to look away, the security official replied, Mr. Black is pressing charges. Official statement says he acted in self-defense. The footage supports that. Where are they now? Wonder Woman asked, her tone low but firm. Medical wing under heavy watch. The heroes exchanged grim looks. Not long after, the calm in Ashbourne's office shattered. Crash! Supergirl burst through the doors with heat in her eyes and rage in her voice. Her fists clenched as she stormed across the room. Ashbourne, she barked, fury flaring in every word. What the hell are you doing now? Ashbourne, seated behind his desk with a cup of tea steaming beside him, didn't flinch. He glanced up, the cool mask of composure draped across his face. I assume you're referring to the incident, he said calmly. Supergirl slammed her palms onto the desk, causing it to shake. You poisoned Kal-El with kryptonite. You fired missiles at Batman, and now you're playing the victim? I am the victim, Ashbourne said, unbothered. They insulted and attacked me in my own office. I defended myself, and I have the footage to prove it. You provoked Batman and now you are pressing charges, she asked through clenched teeth. Ashbourne leaned back, the faintest trace of a smirk curling at the corner of his lips. Actions have consequences. If mine led me to be attacked in my office, what about Batman? Even heroes should have consequences. Don't you think? In an underground meeting, Ashbourne sat across from two of the most calculating minds on Earth. Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor. Lex tapped a folder on the table, his tone filled with quiet triumph. With the footage and the witnesses, this is airtight. We play it right, and Superman and Batman serve time. A year, maybe two. Public trust shifts. Justice League loses its teeth. Amanda Waller, arms crossed and unreadable, didn't bother looking at Lex. What matters more is the optics. We'll get more government support than ever. Public opinion is already shifting. This changes the game in our favor. Ashbourne sipped his coffee, steam curling around his sharp gaze. Good. Then it's time you make up for the Royal Flush Gang incident. Amanda's posture stiffened slightly, but she didn't speak. No more snatching kids from their parents. No more raising them like wolves in a cage, he added. I let it go before because it started before Cadmus. Before you. But that kind of darkness won't fly moving forward. Amanda nodded. Understood. I've no intention of repeating past mistakes. Then, Ashbourne turned to Lex. Hate to break it to you, Ashbourne said smoothly, but I don't plan to imprison them. I will be dropping the charges, or settling it outside the court. Lex's triumphant expression evaporated. What? This is our moment? They still act as the planet's watchdogs, Ashbourne cut him off. Removing them without a viable alternative is short-sighted. This move was meant to loosen Cadmus's leash and get me a small payback at Batman, not to weaken the League considerably. Lex slammed his hand on the table. You're wasting an opportunity. Don't let hatred and the small temptation blind you to the bigger picture, Ashbourne replied with a smile. Lex glared at him, nostrils flaring, but said nothing more. Amanda remained calm, nodding slightly. He's right, she said. Earth still needs heroes, especially against extraterrestrial threats. Especially Superman. Days later, a storm of flashing cameras and murmuring crowds surrounded the courthouse. With the charges officially pressed and the mountain of evidence impossible to dismiss, Superman and Batman were brought to court, hands bound, escorted silently by law enforcement. They did not resist. They didn't need to. The weight of the world's judgment was heavier than any chain. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was charged. Members of the Justice League filled the pews, eyes locked on Ashbourne, who sat calmly on the other side of the room. Supergirl, in particular, glared daggers, arms folded tightly across her chest. The doors opened again, and Batman and Superman, still cuffed, entered. A solemn officer stepped forward, unlocking them. The gesture was symbolic, especially for Superman. Everyone knew no cuff could truly hold him. The judge sat high on his bench, stern and composed. The same judge from Supergirl's trial. A sense of déjà vu hung over the room like a silent omen. "The charges are clear," the judge began. "Attempted assault, threats, and vigilantism without jurisdiction. Particularly disturbing when committed by those we once saw as paragons of justice." The room shifted as he continued. "There's also the matter of Batman's identity. Under normal circumstances, his identity would be revealed for the purposes of this trial. But upon Mr. Black's request, we have refrained from exposing it. No one knows his real identity, including the police. Unless Batman receives a formal sentence, his true name will remain unknown." The room rippled in shock. Even Batman narrowed his eyes. He had assumed his identity remained secret due to fear, or perhaps respect. But now it was clear. This wasn't fear or reverence. It was requested by the opponent. He glanced at Ashbourne, the man who refused to play any game by the rules everyone expected. What is this man playing at? Batman thought. The judge leaned forward. This case is unusual. Again, courtesy of Mr. Black, the jury is already prepared to deliver a verdict. It is a cut-clear case, but considering the unique circumstances we find ourselves in, and before we start formally, Mr. Black, the court is open to hearing your opinion on how we should proceed. Another ripple through the league side, a judge, deferring to a civilian and one of the involved sides at that. But those who had watched Ashbourne's handling of Supergirl knew perhaps this man, odd as he was, still had a shred of reason and fairness. Even Ashbourne was mildly surprised, but he welcomed the control. Standing, he adjusted his coat and began. "For those who missed the full case," Ashbourne said, voice calm and crisp, "the two came to me asking personal questions. Questions about my collection and how I resisted Ace's psychic influence." He looked toward Batman briefly. Batman was unhappy with my refusal to answer. Tempers flared. Previous incidents added fuel. He threatened me, then attacked. The courtroom was silent. "To be fair," Ashbourne continued, "Superman did not strike and tried calming Batman earlier, but I still struck him, knowing full well he wouldn't let me harm Batman without intervening. It was preemptive. I admit, speculative, even." He turned to the judge. "For that, I suggest he be released. Superman is too valuable to Earth, and imprisoning him would be wasteful and foolish." There were murmurs of surprise. Superman blinked, momentarily stunned. Ashbourne's eyes sharpened. But Batman came with intent. He has demonstrated more than once that he is willing to break laws to achieve his goals. His only line in the sand is not to kill. Ashbourne stepped forward slightly, voice steady. "That's not justice, that's convenience." He turned to face the jury now. "Batman is, at the end of the day, a man with gadgets, a vigilante. If he truly wants to protect the world, he can pass his resources to someone else. Sponsor them, but he should no longer be the one in the field." A long silence followed. Ashbourne stepped back and sat down. The courtroom buzzed with low, disbelieving murmurs. Ashbourne's words rippled through the crowd like a cold wind. Even veteran reporters forgot to scribble notes, frozen in anticipation of what would unfold next. Batman narrowed his eyes behind the cowl. Why? If Ashbourne truly wanted him gone, there were simpler ways. Reveal his identity. Push the court for a sentence. Strip him down publicly. But instead, he preserved Bruce Wayne's secret and offered something different. This didn't add up. Superman, voice calm but firm, finally spoke. "You can't reduce Batman to just gadgets. He's more than that." Ashbourne scoffed. "More than that? What else? Intelligence? There are thousands, millions smarter than him. They can provide everything he does from the safety of a desk. No need to punch thugs in alleyways." Superman stepped forward slightly, his eyes locked on Ashbourne. He's among the most skilled and strongest humans on Earth. He's more than gadgets or smarts. Ashbourne smiled dryly. Can you even tell the difference in strength between humans? You're like a god arguing which ant can lift more crumbs. To you, we all look the same. Your opinion is biased at best. That statement cracked the room open. He trained for decades. He saved lives. Batman isn't disposable. More voices joined the fray, some from the League, some from the audience. Emotion clashed with logic as support for the Dark Knight surged. The courtroom tilted on the edge of chaos. Bang! Bang! The judge slammed his gavel with authority, forcing silence to descend. Ashbourne turned, gaze locked on Batman, his voice colder now. Do you think your training makes you irreplaceable? The judge frowned, clearly disapproving of Ashbourne addressing Batman directly, but said nothing. Batman didn't respond immediately. His eyes sharpened. His mind ticked. This wasn't about ego. Ashbourne was setting the stage for something. But what? Finally, he spoke, voice calm and unwavering. I don't know if you'll find someone who can replace me, but I know you can't be the judge of that. You're a normal man with no real training. Ashbourne's expression didn't change, but a faint flicker of something crossed his eyes. He turned to the judge. This is a unique case. One way or another, the verdict will cause backlash. So, if the court permits it, and if Batman would rather avoid prison and keep his identity safe, then let's test his words. The courtroom held its breath. Ashbourne's voice turned sharp, loud enough for all to hear. We do it the old way, he will fight me. No gadgets, no tech, just hand-to-hand combat, the one thing he's spent decades perfecting. If he wins, it ends here. I drop everything. If he loses, his career, his right to put on that mask, becomes my call. A stunned silence followed. The judge's head tilted slightly in disbelief. Ashbourne had just challenged the world's greatest detective to a physical contest, a man said to be trained by assassins, monks, soldiers, and legends. It sounded absurd, insane, almost suicidal. Whispers broke out again, some mocking, some shocked. This was Batman, he challenged. The judge's eyes darted toward Batman. Bruce had already straightened, his body still, his mind focused. He gave a single, sharp nod. Gasps swept the room. The judge turned to the jury, hoping for a signal of sanity. But even they, with bewildered faces, nodded. The gavel didn't fall this time. It didn't need to. The stage was set. The judgment would be written in sweat, fists, and fractured pride. As for Ashbourne, he smiled. For the first time in modern legal history, perhaps in the history of any civilized court, the verdict was to be delivered through a trial by combat. It was absurd, archaic, and borderline theatrical. Yet, in this situation, strangely fitting, judging Batman, a symbol of justice who had stood shoulder to shoulder with gods through the cold rigidity of law, felt incomplete. The court, the people, the world, it all needed more than a verdict. It needed resolution. Ashbourne's proposal had stripped the legend of its armor and reduced everything to a raw human level. One man versus another. No titles, no masks of law or legacy, just fists. It was a release valve, a chance for both sides to unleash their frustrations, their anger, their egos, cleanly, clearly. But as the murmurs spread, so did the confidence of the crowd. Ashbourne's lucky streak ends today. He's smart, but that's Batman. He's going to be eaten alive. For many, the outcome was obvious. This wasn't just a fight, this was a lesson. Arrogance has a price, and Ashbourne was about to pay it in bruises. 30 minutes before the duel. Inside a room reserved for preparation, Ashbourne stood before a mirror. He wore a plain white tank top and black training pants. His body was lean but clearly toned. Near him stood Rex, clearly uneasy, wringing his hands. "This is madness," Rex muttered. "You're going to fight Batman. What the hell were you thinking?" Ashbourne glanced at his reflection, adjusting the bandages on his hands. He smiled slightly. "Trust me a little, Uncle Rex. I don't lose." A knock at the door interrupted their exchange. "Come in," Ashbourne called. The door creaked open and Supergirl stepped in. Her eyes scanned him, pausing briefly at his physique before she blinked and looked away. Ashbourne cleared his throat and she shook her head slightly. Cheeks tinged pink. "What were you thinking?" she asked, her voice tense. "That's Batman. He's going to crush you." And don't forget he already hates your guts. Ashbourne tilted his head. Aren't you on his side? I am, she said plainly. But that doesn't mean I want to see you beaten like a dog. Ashbourne laughed, a calm, amused sound. Relax, I know what I'm doing. He turned back to the mirror. The truth is, Batman is outclassed. This won't even be a fight. She stared at him, unconvinced. Rex mirrored her skepticism. Supergirl folded her arms. Just surrender early. There's no shame in backing out before you get hurt. No one's expecting a miracle. She left with a final glance over her shoulder, her cape trailing behind her like a red shadow. Ashbourne didn't feel anger or frustration. Doubt from others was a natural reaction. No one had seen him fight. No one could understand. Even if Batman matched him in strength, speed, and reaction time, which he didn't, even the supposed experience of the Batman pales in comparison to the experience of centuries of brutal, soul-rending war. Gods, rulers, monarch, Edarim. He had survived them all. Thousands had gathered in the open courtyard behind the courthouse. It was cordoned off by temporary barriers and lined with spectators. Judges, reporters, civilians. Even Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller came to watch. Everyone wanted to witness the spectacle. Most of them wanted to see Ashbourne humbled. Ashbourne walked out confidently, each step slow, deliberate. His calm demeanor stirred confusion among those watching. Is he faking confidence? He doesn't look scared. Poor bastard has no clue. Across the courtyard stood Batman, dressed in a sleek black tracksuit. Only the bat mask remained, his symbol, his shield. Arms folded, he stood unmoving, every inch a predator assessing prey. His sharp eyes followed Ashbourne's every step, but deep within him, a faint unease twisted. This didn't feel right. Ashbourne wasn't nervous, he wasn't agitated, he wasn't pretending either. Batman's instincts screamed trap. He'd already asked Superman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter to keep their eyes wide open. If he pulls anything, he had said, stop it immediately. Batman stepped forward, each movement calculated. He stopped just a few paces from Ashbourne, his posture rigid, the weight of suspicion heavy in his gaze. What are you playing at? Batman asked, voice low but sharp. What's the point of all this? Ashbourne's smile never faltered. You asked me a question, remember? He said with unnerving calm. And I gave you the answer, even answered your portion of it. But you didn't seem convinced. The smile curled into something darker, predatory. So here we are. I told you I'd play. This is the answer to your question. A chill crawled up Batman's spine. His eyes narrowed, his instincts screaming. He remembered it now, that moment, when he struck Ashbourne in their earlier encounter, demanding answers. Everything that followed had been a path, deliberate and winding, leading here. No tricks, no gadgets, no advantages. Just this moment. Just him. Batman couldn't shake the feeling that he had walked into a trap, but one made from his own assumptions, and that smile. That damned smile on Ashbourne's face. It unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Batman moved first. Fast, sharp, intent to end it before Ashbourne had a chance to pull something unexpected. He launched a powerful punch straight at his opponent's face, full force, no holding back. But in a blur of motion, Ashbourne caught his wrist mid-flight. Then stepped forward, and with a sudden pivot, he pulled Batman's momentum past him and flipped him hard onto the ground. Jiu-jitsu! Gasps echoed from the crowd. 1 second, Batman was attacking with the ferocity of a legend. Then the next, he was flat on his back, staring up at the open sky. Ashbourne didn't follow up. He simply stood, arms relaxed, watching his opponent with that same grin. Remember, he said coolly, your future as a hero is on the line. Stand up. Batman rose, fast but cautious. He didn't know Ashbourne learned jiu-jitsu, and from this slam he could estimate that Ashbourne was probably as strong and fast as him. He hadn't expected any of this. He was a master of over a dozen martial arts with extensive training, but he'd let arrogance creep in earlier. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Ashbourne didn't wait. He advanced, fluid and quick, throwing a high kick. Batman saw it, anticipated the motion. He moved to block and counter. But Ashbourne's legs suddenly accelerated, a deceptive Brazilian kick, up then violently down. The strike crashed into Batman's shoulder, spinning him to the ground once more. The audience was silent. Again, 2 strikes, 2 takedowns. Ashbourne stood still, hands behind his back as if this were nothing. "I'm waiting for you, Batman." Batman rose again, slower this time. His legs were steady, but the pain was spreading, his vision briefly blurred. His mind raced. What did Ashbourne train in exactly? He gathered all available information about Ashbourne. He observed Ashbourne posture and movement carefully in his daily life before. There was no indication anywhere he was trained at all. Ashbourne waited patiently, then said, "Want to attack again, or should I?" Batman offered no reply, just took his stance again. Ashbourne chuckled and lunged forward at full speed. Batman braced, waiting for the opening, but Ashbourne leapt at the last second, hands grasping Batman's shoulders as his body flipped over him. For a brief instant, Ashbourne's weight rested atop Batman, balancing in a moment of aerial control, as if performing a handstand on the Bat's shoulders. Batman realized too late what was happening. He raised his hands to guard his head, but Ashbourne's knee came crashing down, not at his skull, but squarely into his right shoulder. Crack! A sickening sound, followed by a grunt of pain. Batman dropped to the ground, clutching his shattered shoulder. Ashbourne stood over him, a cold smile on his face. He spoke no words this time. Instead, without warning, he raised a leg high, and brought it down with full force on Batman's head. The Dark Knight hit the ground hard. Blood pooled from a split in his brow, his breath ragged, fingers trembling. But he rose again, slowly, painfully, face bloodied. Right arm useless, legs shaking beneath the weight of his own defiance. Ashbourne's smile widened, then the storm began. Punches, kicks, blows from every direction. Ashbourne unleashed a relentless, brutal barrage, his fists and feet crashing against Batman's ribs, stomach, legs, back. The crowd could hardly watch. Batman, the symbol of human will and mastery, reduced to a punching bag. Ashbourne spoke between strikes, his voice calm, almost amused. "This is more amusing than I expected." Batman gave no answer. Only more silence. Only more resilience. Around them, murmurs spread like wildfire. "Is this really happening? Someone stop this!" Superman clenched his fists, ready to step forward, but Wonder Woman placed a hand on his chest. "This is the honor of a warrior," she said solemnly. "He chooses this." Batman swayed, barely conscious. Ashbourne halted his assault, breathing steady. Then, with a laugh, he stepped back. "I feel refreshed," he said to no one in particular. "I surrender." The words hit like thunder. Ashbourne, the victor, surrendered, mocking the rules, owning the moment. He looked at the broken man, struggling to remain standing, and spoke quietly, but clearly enough for the audience to hear. "I told you this is what would happen. This is what remained of us. Now you understand." And with that, Ashbourne turned and walked away, leaving the legend of the Bat battered and silent in the dust. The moment the trial ended, the Justice League surged forward, surrounding the broken figure of their comrade. Batman, once the towering symbol of unbreakable will, lay motionless on the ground, bruised, bloodied, and beaten beyond recognition. His mask barely clung to his face, which now bore the consequences of every blow. His chest heaved with shallow breaths, and blood trickled from the corners of his mouth. Superman lifted him gently, urgency radiating from his usually composed face. The others flanked them, forming a protective escort as they rushed him into the medical wing, a grim silence accompanying every step. The crowd left behind stood still, stunned. The murmurs grew louder, no longer whispers, but waves of disbelief. Ashbourne hadn't just won. He hadn't even come to win. From the very beginning, it was clear now Ashbourne didn't care about victory, surrender, or justice. He had sought a stage, a chance, a legally sanctioned moment to drag a myth down to earth, and beat him there. And Batman and all his staunch defenders had handed him that chance. Now the public wrestled with the aftermath. If a supposed civilian, no matter how rich or eccentric, could destroy the legendary Dark Knight in a fair fight, what did that mean about the hero they had revered for so long? Why does a businessman fight better than a vigilante who trained his whole life? One voice asked aloud, echoed by countless others. Individuals who knew Ashbourne on a more personal level, or watched his stunts before, began to revisit memories of Ashbourne's past. His confrontations with the Joker, his calm during chaos, his dismissive attitude toward threats others cowered before. At the time, many assumed he was reckless or lucky. But now, it all carried a different meaning. He hadn't needed saving. He'd never been in danger. Ashbourne, it turned out, had always been capable, always in control. Even without weapons, even in the worst moments, he was more than he let on. And then came the most uncomfortable question of all, the one none dared to voice before. Was Batman really irreplaceable? If the gadgets and the resources, if all of it were handed to someone else with enough training and willpower, would they too become the Bat? The very foundation of Batman's mythos trembled. Ashbourne, meanwhile, had changed back into his simple attire, dark jeans, a gray shirt, and a black overcoat slung lazily over his shoulder. As he stepped out of the changing room, he found Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor waiting for him near a quiet corridor. Lex was the first to speak, a half-smirk playing on his lips. "I didn't know you had formal training." Ashbourne chuckled, brushing a stray hair from his eyes. "I don't," he said, "but I'm a quick learner, and I keep myself in shape." Lex didn't argue, but he clearly didn't believe that. Amanda Waller, however, had her eyes on a bigger picture. She was already thinking 2 moves ahead. "Thanks to you," she said coolly. "I'm going to get more support than ever. You didn't just question the future of the Justice League. You took down one of their most respected members on neutral ground. Publicly. Fairly." Ashbourne gave a dry chuckle. "Glad someone is pleased with today's play." He turned slightly, taking a deep breath as if savoring the moment. "I've had enough violence for one day," he added, stretching his neck. "I'd like to return to my peaceful, laid-back life, if that's still allowed." Without another word, he turned and walked away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, like a man who'd simply finished a morning jog. Amanda watched him go, her expression unreadable. "He's good at this game," she said quietly to Lex. "Pity he's not as emotionally invested in it as you." Lex said nothing. Ashbourne made his way through the lingering crowd, their gazes trailing him with whispers of awe, confusion, and silent respect. His stride was relaxed, his expression calm. Near the edge of the parking area, a sleek black car waited, and Rex stood, leaning against the hood, arms folded, his face unreadable. As Ashbourne approached, Rex straightened. "When did you learn how to fight like that?" Ashbourne opened the door and smirked over his shoulder. "I told you I outclass him, didn't I? But you didn't believe me. Have a little faith." Rex didn't answer right away. He sighed, following Ashbourne around to the passenger side. "Just try to avoid danger next time. Stay safe." Ashbourne gave a short chuckle as he slid into the driver's seat. "I don't like violence anyway. Too messy." Before Rex could respond, a voice drifted in from behind them, laced with disbelief and reprimand. "Seeing you like that, I don't believe you one bit." Ashbourne turned to see Supergirl approaching, arms crossed, her golden hair catching the fading light. Her eyes burned with disappointment, more than anger. "You didn't fight to win," she continued. "You fought to mayhem, Batman. I still can't believe you actually did it." Ashbourne raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Will you make up your mind already? First, you didn't want me to get beaten and asked me to surrender. Now, you're upset I gave him the beating of his life. He could have avoided that if he'd surrendered." Supergirl scoffed. "When I said that, I didn't know you could fight. Now the whole thing reeks of deception. From the very beginning, you were aiming at him. You wanted to beat him, humiliate him." Ashbourne didn't deny it. Instead, he let a smile pull at the corner of his mouth. "After a harmless joke, he came to my office, insulted me, damaged my property, punched me in the face. As much as I like to avoid violence, I couldn't just let that slide, could I?" Supergirl exhaled slowly and looked away for a moment. "You do realize you've effectively made the entire Justice League despise you now, right? That's not great for you." Ashbourne shrugged. "Well, I am not a criminal, and now they know I'm not just a snobby rich jerk." He gave her a wink. "I'm a capable snobby rich jerk. I'll manage." Without waiting for a reply, Ashbourne climbed into the car, Rex following close behind. As the engine hummed to life and the car began to pull away, Supergirl remained standing there, watching, a long sigh escaping her lips. Inside the car, Rex glanced at Ashbourne. "You do realize the girl likes you, right?" Ashbourne kept his eyes on the road and smirked. "I'm not an idiot." Rex raised an eyebrow. "So, why not ask her out?" "She's quite pretty, if you ask me." Ashbourne let out a quiet chuckle. "Dating comes with too much responsibility. I'd rather enjoy my life before I commit to something like that." Rex blinked. "You can do both. I see no conflict." Ashbourne shook his head. "If I do something, I do it to the best of my ability. If I date, I'll take it seriously. That means time, energy, and responsibility. And right now," he paused, glancing at the rearview mirror. I've got other things to do. And even if I don't, it will probably not end well. Rix frowned slightly. You sound like you're planning something. Ashbourne didn't answer. When his involvement with Cadmus came to light, he had no doubt the heroes would consider him a second Lex Luthor. The corridor leading to the observatory deck of the watchtower was silent. Supergirl stepped inside, her boots quiet against the metal floor, a head standing still with arms crossed behind his back. Superman gazed through the vast window. Earth spun slowly in the blackness of space, peaceful and serene. Hey, Kal-El, Kara called gently as she approached. How is Batman? Superman didn't turn, but his voice was low and thoughtful. He's fine, physically at least. It'll take a few weeks for a full recovery. Kara nodded. Coming to stand beside him, she folded her arms and stared down at Earth as well. I talked with Ashbourne. That got Superman's attention. He turned his head slightly, listening. Kara continued. He admitted everything. Said it was all on purpose. He wanted to humiliate Batman because of what happened at the office. Superman sighed, his shoulders dropping slightly. Bruce was out of line. I didn't like how he acted either. He was angry, and Ashbourne's attitude only made things worse, but I never expected this to be the result. That Ashbourne would retaliate so quickly, trap us all in a public spectacle. He looked away again, brow furrowed. I should have stopped Bruce the moment he started treating Ashbourne like a criminal. But I didn't. And now, Batman's broken and humiliated publicly. Our reputation's taken a hit, and worst of all, he paused. We might have created something worse than Lex Luthor, he finally said. A more capable version. Ashbourne said it himself. He doesn't have an ego to feed. That makes him far more dangerous. More unpredictable. Kara didn't speak for a moment. Then she said softly, I don't think Ashbourne will ever turn into a second Lex. He's not like that. But, she smirked, he'll definitely be a jerk to you from now on. Superman's serious expression cracked into a small smile. I'll gladly take a jerk Ashbourne over a Lexified Ashbourne any day. Kara laughed quietly. It had been over a month since the trial, since the moment Ashbourne delivered a beating to one of Earth's greatest heroes in front of the world. Since then, no heroes came to his door. No villains either. The streets grew quieter wherever he walked, yet his reputation had only grown in the silence. And yet, life went on. Shadow Corp thrived. The aftermath of the trial only seemed to elevate the company's standing. Investors grew more confident, contracts came more frequently, and the board of directors, most of whom didn't care about capes and crusades, praised the firm hand Ashbourne showed against unwarranted actions. Inside the sleek walls of Shadow Corp, everything was operating smoothly, professionally, and very, very profitably. Ashbourne, however, sat alone in his office, watching the news. The broadcast switched between awestruck reporters and looping footage of the massive alien spaceship that had entered Earth's orbit hours ago. The vessel was shaped like a jagged crescent moon, dark and pulsating with green energy. Around it, the Justice League floated in diplomatic formation, Superman, Wonder Woman, Hal Jordan, and others, acting as intermediaries. The broadcast continued. The Thanagarian delegation claims to bring warning of an interstellar war threatening to reach Earth. They have requested a public address to Earth's governments and people, an emergency summit scheduled to air tonight with Justice League support. Ashbourne leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing. So, it begins. He turned the volume down, already deep in thought. He remembered this scenario. This wasn't a gesture of peace. The Thanarians had no intention of protecting Earth. They had come to use it. They said they are going to build a shield generator to protect Earth. But in reality, it is some sort of a teleportation device. One that, when activated, would obliterate Earth while giving Thanarian access to their enemy's homeworld. In another world, he remembered, Hawkgirl fell in love with John Stewart, the Green Lantern of that timeline. Her divided heart saved the Earth. Her betrayal of Thanagar was a pivotal emotional choice. But in this world, John Stewart wasn't here. Not yet, at least. Instead, it was Hal Jordan. That single change pulled the rug from under the script. Ashbourne couldn't rely on fate. Couldn't wait for a dramatic redemption arc to save them. He sighed heavily, standing from his chair. Looks like I'll have to step in to help again. The shadows in the room stirred unnaturally, curling at his feet like smoke. Then, as if breaking from the laws of light itself, his own shadow detached, pulling away from his feet and morphing into a black knight. The knight knelt respectfully before Ashbourne. Ashbourne looked at the kneeling, then back at the news. The knight dissolved into a shadow and left the office. He didn't want to get involved, but now it was his planet too, he muttered to himself. No one's turning my Earth into a stepping stone. The great conference hall was filled with tension and expectation. Delegates and ambassadors from all over Earth had gathered, their expressions ranging from awe to anxiety. The dome of the hall was open to the stars, a symbolic gesture of unity and peace, but the presence of the towering Thanagarian vessel looming above Earth cast a long shadow, both literal and figurative. Protagonist, commander of the Thanagarian fleet, stood center stage, flanked by his soldiers and the Justice League. The camera drones hovered overhead, broadcasting his speech across the globe. With a regal bearing and firm voice, he addressed the room. "We came in peace," he began, but also in urgency. "I will not speak in riddles or half-truths. One of our agents, Shara Hull, known to you as Hawk Girl, was stationed here as a scout. She was sent to observe your planet's defenses." Murmurs broke out instantly. "Hawk Girl, a spy." "She found them lacking," Protagonist continued, unfazed. "And that is not an insult, but a fact. Your world is vulnerable. It will be the next to fall if we do not act now." He gestured, and the screens lit up behind him with holographic images. Armies of towering, reptilian creatures swarming cities, tearing apart civilizations. The videos shifted to scorched planets, oceans of fire, and skies blackened with Gordanian warships. "This is the Gordanian threat," Protagonist declared. "The most ruthless force in the known universe. Destroyers. Enslavers. They will not negotiate. They do not reason. And Earth is in their path." A still silence fell as the visuals ended. The ambassadors sat frozen, expressions grave. "To protect this planet," Protagonist said, "we will construct a shield generator, a device powerful enough to stall the Gordanian onslaught until our fleet can arrive in full force. But time is limited. We require Earth's help to complete the project before it is too late." Gasps and whispers rippled through the assembly. Some representatives reached for their phones, whispering frantically into encrypted lines. Others leaned in to confer with their aides. This was no longer a diplomatic event, it was the edge of war. The Justice League members present stood in uneasy formation behind the alien leader. Wonder Woman's gaze was unreadable. Flash's jaw was tight. Martian Manhunter simply watched silently. From the back of the room, Superman stepped forward. The room stilled as he approached Protagonist. His tone was calm but filled with earnestness. "Thank you for warning us," Kal-El said sincerely. "Whatever past misunderstandings existed, we can't ignore what you've shown. The Justice League will do everything we can to aid in the fight against the Gordanians." Protagonist gave a respectful nod. "It is our greatest desire to see them stopped. All help is welcomed." Then, one of the Thanagarian guards flinched. His voice cut into the solemnity, sharp and wary. "What is that?" The eyes of the room followed his outstretched finger. A shadow, long and unnaturally fluid, slithered across the floor, defying the light from the overheads and the holograms. It moved like smoke in water. Too fast, too alive. Delegates gasped and backed away. Security tensed. Superman's body tensed instinctively as he stepped in front of the Thanagarians, raising an arm defensively. The shadow flared. A pillar of blue and black energy erupted in a silent burst, casting a cold, surreal glow over the chamber. From within the swirling mass stepped a figure, tall, imposing, draped in jet-black armor with veins of glowing blue coursing through its design. His eyes, two cold, burning sapphires, scanned the room. Gasps echoed. Some screamed. Camera zoomed in. It was him. The Black Knight who took down Doomsday with ease. The mysterious figure who appeared out of nowhere and disappeared as soon as the job was done. The Justice League straightened, bodies rigid. Wonder Woman's hand slid toward her sword. Flash lowered into a sprint-ready stance. Even Martian Manhunter flinched. The knight didn't move. He just stood quietly, looming like a shadow brought to life. Then Superman stepped forward again, his voice softer, now curious. "We didn't get a chance to thank you last time," he said. "I didn't expect to see you here. What should I call you?" The knight tilted his head ever so slightly. A moment passed. Then he spoke. The voice was low, calm, and edged with a faint, ghostly echo. "On the orders of my king, you are to leave Earth immediately. Earth won't be part of your war." The room fell into silence. All eyes, ambassadors, Justice League, Thanagarian soldiers, locked onto the Black Knight, whose voice had just turned the air to ice. Talik's expression twisted into one of disbelief and restrained fury. "You didn't get the full message," Hro said, his voice sharp with indignation. "Earth has no choice. An army is already on its way, and only we can protect this planet." The knight remained still. When he spoke, his voice echoed with a cold certainty that silenced even the whispers in the room. "Your lies are seen through by the wisdom of my king. You want to build a teleportation device to attack the Gordanians' homeworld, sacrificing Earth in the process. By the order of my king, you have only two choices. Go back and protect your home, or be exterminated here." The chamber erupted into gasps and chaos. Even the Justice League members were taken aback. Superman's eyes narrowed, turning toward Talak with suspicion. Wonder Woman stepped forward cautiously, her hand still on her sword. Hro's expression darkened as their plan was revealed in front of the entire world. He stepped forward and raised his voice. "This king of yours is mistaken or a liar. We are here to help defend Earth." But before another word could leave anyone's mouth, the knight drew his sword in a single, fluid motion. The metallic whisper of the blade echoed like a death sentence. "For my king's honor, your lives are forfeit," the knight said coldly. As if summoned by his fury, shadows erupted across the ground, flaring like dark flames. Dozens of black knights rose in unison, each one clad in different armor, wielding a terrifying variety of weapons. From behind the press podium, thunderous explosions erupted. The Thanagarian ships burst into flames, consumed from within. Rose's eyes widened in horror, but he barely had a second to react. He reached for his weapon, but it was too late. A blur of black and blue was upon him. Ygritte moved like lightning, a single slash cleaving through Talak. The Thanagarian leader was severed in half before his soldiers could even process what had happened. Girl screamed in anguish and rage, launching herself forward, but she didn't make it more than a few feet. Another knight intercepted her, blade slicing across her chest. She crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The Justice League immediately sprang into action, not to fight, but to save. Superman and Martian Manhunter flew through the chaos, evacuating diplomats and civilians. Flash zipped across the battlefield, pulling people from harm's way. Wonder Woman shielded them with her bracers, deflecting debris and stray blasts. But the Thanagarians weren't so lucky. Ygritte and his knights carved through their ranks with terrifying efficiency. Cutting down warriors, the Thanagarians fought valiantly, but it was a one-sided massacre. Within minutes, the air stank of blood and fire. The Thanagarian presence was annihilated, save for a terrified handful who had managed to throw down their weapons. Within their now burning mothership, shadows crept like vipers. More soldiers emerged, spreading through the halls, eliminating any last resistance with silent, ruthless efficiency. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Superman returned, eyes scanning the carnage, his face grim. He landed before the Black Knight, who stood amid bodies and ashes like a statue. "Who were you?" Superman asked, voice steady. "And who is your king?" The knight turned to him, glowing blue eyes flaring beneath his helmet. "Ygritte," he said, "a knight of the Shadow Monarch." His gaze shifted to the remaining Thanagarians, wounded, broken, and terrified. "Go back to your race," Ygritte declared. "Tell them Earth is off limits. If this happens again, we shall come to your homeworld and exterminate all of you." There was no more warning, no more ceremonies. One by one, the knights dissolved into ribbons of shadow and vanished, leaving only the echo of their presence and the smoking remains of an invasion that never got the chance to begin. The world reeled in the aftermath of the Thanagarian massacre. Speculations spread like wildfire. News anchors, military analysts, and even conspiracy theorists flooded every broadcast and online forum with a single question: who is the Shadow Monarch? What was his purpose? And more importantly, was he friend or foe? The only reassurance anyone had was that his knights had only acted in Earth's favor so far. But with their overwhelming power, their sudden appearance, and the cold efficiency with which they had wiped out a technologically superior alien fleet, no one felt safe. Not the governments, and certainly not the heroes. But far from all that noise, Ashbourne lived untouched by the chaos. For the past week, he had wandered across Europe, enjoying quiet days and lively nights. He strolled through vineyards in Italy, visited castles in Germany, and indulged in culinary delights from Paris to Prague. It was a brief return to the calm he enjoyed before the shadow of responsibility loomed again. That peace shattered when his phone buzzed. Rix's voice crackled on the line. "That girl, Ace, the one who used to be with the Joker, she came looking for you." Ashbourne, lounging on a seaside patio with a glass of wine in hand, straightened. "S?" "Yeah," Rex said. "When she found out you were in Europe, she left. No clue where to." Ashbourne thanked him and ended the call, his mood sombering. So much for vacation. Within the hour, he was aboard his private plane, leaving the golden coastlines of Europe behind. While en route, he opened a news stream, expecting the usual nonsense. But what he saw made him narrow his eyes. Metropolis's Central Park had become something out of a fantasy nightmare. Towering, twisted trees spiraled toward the sky. Multicolored flowers bloomed in impossible shapes, whispering as they swayed. Civilians fled in terror. The Royal Flush Gang, or a new version of it, is running rampant and being fought off by the Justice League, but what caught Ashbourne's attention the most was the castle. A massive fairy tale-like structure now sat in the center of the park like it had always belonged there. Ashbourne closed his eyes. He already knew the cause. "Ace?" He exhaled slowly. The plane would take hours to reach Metropolis. He didn't have that long. A moment later, only a flickering shadow remained in his seat. Ashbourne emerged from a narrow alley in Metropolis. He wasted no time, heading straight toward the park. As he arrived, he found the new Royal Flush Gang sitting, defeated and tied up, on the pavement. The chaos had been briefly quelled. Surrounding the gang were members of the Justice League: Batman, Huntress, Stargirl, Red Tornado, and Green Lantern Hal Jordan. They stood silently, watching a descending helicopter approaching the park. Ashbourne approached. The League noticed him immediately. Each member of the League looked at him warily and unfriendly, especially Batman, who narrowed his eyes dangerously, but he said nothing. Ashbourne didn't address them. He just glanced for a moment at Batman before his gaze went back to the helicopter. Batman was wearing pants-like armor, similar to the one he gifted. Ashbourne's quick glance was caught by Batman, and the man's fist clenched, realizing where it was aimed at. The helicopter landed with a soft thud of displaced wind. The doors opened, and Amanda Waller stepped out. She immediately spotted Ashbourne, but didn't acknowledge him. His association with Project Cadmus was buried deep beneath government layers. Instead, she spoke to the League. "Ace's powers have evolved," she said. "She's not projecting illusions anymore. She's warping reality." Waller's voice was grim as she continued. "She's losing control, and when she finally breaks, everything within miles of here will be reshaped permanently. Hundreds of thousands will die. It'll be a catastrophe." A heavy silence settled over the park. The Justice League exchanged uneasy glances. Batman stepped forward and asked, "Who are you?" Amanda Waller's face was set like stone as she lifted the secure case in her hands and unlatched it. "It doesn't matter, but this does," she said, her voice cold and resolute. "It is our only solution." She opened the case. Inside sat a small, intricate device, sleek, metallic, with a softly glowing core pulsing blue. It looked almost unimpressive, but the weight it carried was unmistakable. A weapon with one purpose. Stargirl took a step forward, staring at it. "You want us to kill her?" she asked, her voice tight with disbelief. Waller didn't flinch. "It's her or hundreds of thousands. We can't afford hesitation." Before anyone could protest or speak, Ashbourne was already beside her, having crossed the distance in an instant. Without a word, he reached into the case and plucked the device out. He held it between his fingers, studying it, casually twirling it like a coin. Amanda's brow twitched, but she didn't stop him. "Huntress," scowling, snapped. "This isn't a toy. Give it back. Now." Ashbourne's eyes slid toward her, unreadable. He smiled faintly. And then he let go. The device fell. For a split second, everyone froze, watching it drop. It hit the ground. Crack. Before Huntress could say a word, Ashbourne stepped forward and crushed it under his heel. The metal shattered, sparks flickering from the ruined circuitry. Amanda's voice cut through the silence, sharp and livid. "Do you realize what you've done? That was our only way to stop Ace." The heroes around him looked furious. Red Tornado's eyes flared. Stargirl's hands clenched around her staff. Batman's fist curled at his side. Ashbourne didn't flinch. I know what you are thinking, he said simply, voice calm, but this toy isn't needed. He began walking toward the massive, looming castle at the heart of the park, unconcerned with the seething tension behind him. But Huntress had had enough. She darted in front of him, planting her feet to block his path and throwing out her arm. You're not going anywhere! Ashbourne didn't slow. With a single, fluid movement, he grabbed her arm, flipped her over his shoulder, and drove her into the ground. The others moved immediately, startled and ready to engage. Stargirl raised her staff. Green Lantern's ring glowed. Red Tornado's turbines activated. Batman was already moving to flank. But Ashbourne didn't even glance their way. The sheer disregard sent a ripple of frustration and insult through them. Ashbourne, Batman barked. Stop right there. Ashbourne didn't stop walking. Without looking back, he said, Your services are not needed. Go play somewhere else. Stargirl's temper flared. That's it! She raised her staff and fired a blast of brilliant cosmic energy aimed straight at him. But before it could reach him, the earth between them erupted. A solid wall of bark and thorns rose from the ground, intercepting the blast and blocking it completely. Everyone stared, stunned. The park began to stir. Trees leaning inward, flowers turning to follow Ashbourne, the path ahead parting as though inviting him forward. What's going on? Stargirl asked, stepping back. Ace, he said. She's protecting him. She wants to meet him. The castle was quiet. A strange peace settled over the towering walls, as if the chaos outside had never reached within. Inside it was a park filled with trees and toys of children. Ashbourne passed them without a pause. At the center of it all, within a vast space, Ace sat on a swing. She swayed gently alone, her expression blank as her eyes followed Ashbourne's approach. I came back as soon as I heard you came by, Ashbourne said calmly, stopping a few paces from her. Ace's eyes moved to the space in front of her and spoke. You said I could come to you if I wanted to talk or if I needed help. Ashbourne took a step closer. Your time is running out. I'm afraid you don't have much left. If there's anything you want to say, now is the time. Without waiting for an invitation, he walked to the second swing beside her and sat down. Ace's eyes shifted to him. My powers evolved a lot, she said quietly. And still, I can't affect you, but now I can feel it. You're strong, stronger than anything I've seen. Ashbourne didn't respond to the compliment. His voice was steady. I know your story, the choices that were taken from you. You were cheated out of your childhood. Out of your life. I expected this to happen eventually. You were dying. Ace stopped swinging. Her voice was soft but filled with hopelessness. Do you want to kill me? Ashbourne looked ahead. Even if you die, no real damage will happen. But that's not the right question. The question is, do you want to live? She kept her gaze, her expression emotionless. Can you prevent my death? Ashbourne nodded once. There was a pause, then she asked, why? He answered simply, try to read my memory again. I'll allow it this time. It's faster. Ace hesitated. Then, without a word, she reached out with her power. And what she saw left her stunned. Flashes of endless blood and carnage. A man fighting armies, killing monsters, commanding shadows. The passage of centuries, where war and death were constants. A life forged through violence, shaped by an unseen force. The system that dictated every move, every breath. A life of power, but no peace or freedom. She recoiled slightly, her eyes wide. Ashbourne's voice cut through the haze. Now you know. He looked straight ahead, not needing to explain further. Your life was taken by the government, by those who wanted to use you. I was trapped in a hellish cycle created by something worse. A system that forced me to fight in war, not mine, to kill and survive. Again and again. I never wanted that life. But to live, I had to obey. His gaze met hers. You're like me, but on a much smaller scale. Silence fell between them again. Then Ashbourne asked, voice low, so, do you want to live? Tears welled in Ace's eyes. She nodded. Ashbourne extended a hand. A vial materialized between his fingers, glowing faintly with a strange, red liquid. Drink this, he said gently. It will undo the damage to your body, and I'll seal a portion of your power to stop it from hurting you any further. Ace took the vial with trembling hands, holding it tightly. And for the first time, her face had a flicker of an emotion. She looked hopeful. Amanda Waller and the Justice League stood outside the remnants of the former battlefield. They had spent the last several minutes trying and failing to breach the castle. Energy blasts, tech scans, brute force, nothing worked. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything changed. The twisted trees and overgrown flora that had consumed Central Park vanished. The strange, warped plants disintegrated into harmless dust, carried off by a gentle wind. The Royal Flush Gang, previously altered forms, reverted back to normal humans, unconscious and restrained, and the towering, ethereal castle that had loomed ominously in the middle of it all simply dissolved, like a mirage dissipating under the sun. The world returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. From where the castle once stood, two figures emerged. Ashbourne, calm as ever, and walking beside him, was Ace. Amanda's eyes widened, the League members tensed, automatically on edge at the sight of the girl, but Ace didn't acknowledge their stares or their unspoken threats. She walked with Ashbourne, her expression blank, as if none of them even existed. Amanda stepped forward, voice sharp. "What is going on?" Ashbourne gave her a relaxed smile. "Problem solved, her powers are under control. And she's not dying anymore." Amanda's jaw clenched. "How could this be?" "That's not what our analysis concluded." Ashbourne gave a half shrug. "I've got some tricks up my sleeve." Then he added with a casual tone, "Also, do me a favor, Amanda. Help me bypass the official procedures. I'm adopting Ace, but the age difference might raise some flags." It was as if time froze. Amanda stared, stunned. Ashbourne's request made her mind skip the fact he exposed they have some sort of a relation. The Justice League also stood in silent disbelief. Not even Stargirl had a quip ready. Amanda finally spoke, incredulous. "What do you mean by adopting?" Ashbourne's expression went neutral. "It means I want her to take the black name, registered as my daughter." "How hard is that to understand?" Amanda frowned, her voice laced with disbelief. "You want to adopt a ticking bomb?" "She's not a bomb anymore," Ashbourne replied smoothly. "Her problem is resolved. This won't happen again. I'll be her guardian from now on. My decision is final. So do me a favor and save everyone the trouble." Amanda didn't reply immediately. This wasn't just a lot to take in. It was an impossible situation. The girl had just threatened to alter reality. The government would never allow her to just disappear with someone like Ashbourne. Before she could speak, Batman stepped forward, his voice stern. "Stop your games, Ashbourne. Ace will come into League custody." Ashbourne turned his head slowly toward Batman. His eyes were void of emotion. "I am completely serious. And if erasing the League is required, I'll gladly do it. You are all far more fragile than you realize. It would just be slightly troublesome to lose the planet's watchdogs." Stargirl scoffed. "And how are you going to do that?" Ashbourne glanced at her, his tone dry. "I have my ways, Courtney." She froze, her blood running cold. She raised her staff, voice shaking with sudden fury. "How do you know that name?" Ashbourne didn't answer. Instead, he looked back at Amanda. "If anyone makes even the slightest noise about Ace, just give me their name. I'll handle them." He turned and walked away. Ace followed silently. Stargirl pointed her staff at him, fire in her eyes, but Batman stopped her with a firm hand. "You can't possibly let him walk away like that," she snapped. Batman's eyes didn't leave Ashbourne's retreating form. "It's between whatever division of the government is responsible for Ace and him now." Amanda said nothing. She turned away and began walking in the opposite direction, lips pressed in a thin line. This was a serious matter. Batman looked at the others. "We don't know how much he really knows, and if he ever shares it out of spite, a lot of people around us will suffer for it." The League remained silent. Ashbourne walked through the gates of ShadowCorp. Ace followed silently at his side. The moment Rex saw them, he blinked in surprise. "You're back already?" Rex asked, raising a brow. "How'd you get back so fast?" Ashbourne waved the question away. "That's not important right now." "She is." He gestured toward Ace. Rex's gaze shifted to the girl, and his expression changed instantly. Nervousness crept into his features as he studied her carefully. "I've decided to adopt her," Ashbourne declared plainly. "Starting today, she is Ace Black, my adopted daughter." Rick stared at him blankly for a moment, as if trying to process the words. "Come again?" "She is my daughter now," Ashbourne repeated, then turned to Ace and gestured toward Rex. "This is Rex. You can call him Grandpa Rex." Rex looked like he was having an internal system error. "You can't just declare someone your daughter out of nowhere," he protested. "And you're clearly not old enough for that." Ashbourne gave a small shrug. Just some stupid rules, and rules are made to be broken. Don't worry about it. I'll get it approved one way or another. Before Rex could argue further, Ashbourne added, start looking for a good school to enroll her in. I'll be out buying her clothes, and she'll be living with me. Bye, Uncle Rex. As he turned, Ace followed without hesitation. In a flat voice, she echoed, bye, Grandpa Rex. Rex was left standing there, mouth slightly open. Ashbourne took Ace to a well-known clothing shop in the city. The cleric, an overly enthusiastic stylist who recognized Ashbourne, quickly got to work, with Ace giving no input whatsoever. The choice of clothing was left entirely to Ashbourne and the cleric's taste. Dozens of dresses, casual outfits, and seasonal wear were bought in one go. Afterward, Ashbourne took her to eat. They visited a series of restaurants, from street food to a small rooftop cafe. Ace didn't say much, but followed quietly, her presence calm, neutral. They spent the entire day hopping from one place to another, like any normal parent and child on a casual outing. If one ignored the absurdity of the pair's existence, when they finally returned home, Ashbourne's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing who was waiting for him. Supergirl. She stood by the front steps, arms crossed, her gaze flicking between him and Ace. Is it true? She asked, her voice low. You're adopting her to be your daughter? Ashbourne replied without hesitation. Sure, news travels quickly. He looked at Ace. Introduce yourself. Ace, face still blank, said in a monotone voice. Ace Black. Nice to meet you. Ashbourne gave a slight nod. We still have some work to do on her facial expressions. But yeah, she's now my daughter. Supergirl stared at him, speechless. She had heard the whole exchange previously between Ashbourne and Rex thanks to her super hearing. She remembered all too well how Ashbourne rejected dating because he didn't want the responsibility that came with it, and now he'd adopted a girl just 3 or 4 years younger than her. Was not caring for her even a bigger responsibility? She couldn't make sense of it at all. Her eyes narrowed. If you've got time to play father, then you've got time to date. Ashbourne didn't miss a beat. I won't date you. Supergirl's eyes widened. Why? Ashbourne replied evenly, because I know it won't end well. For a moment, Supergirl looked like she might argue, but then she just shook her head and flew away, her cape snapping in the wind. Ace turned to Ashbourne and said, She is sad. Ashbourne sighed softly. I know. Ashbourne pushed open the large oak doors of the black villa, the creaking echoing faintly through the vast halls. The air inside was cold, still, untouched, just as it had been since Jinx left. Dust didn't dare settle here, but the silence was suffocating. A silence that had lingered far too long. Ace stepped in behind him, her expression blank as her eyes scanned the grand entrance. Marble floors, tall ceilings, old paintings, and rows of darkened chandeliers welcomed her, though none of it seemed to impress or interest her. This is home now, Ashbourne said, his voice echoing through the emptiness. Make yourself comfortable. She said nothing, simply walked forward as if she belonged there. Ashbourne led her upstairs to a room beside his own. He pushed the door open, revealing a bedroom already prepared. Simple but warm, lavender curtains, a soft bed, bookshelves, a window overlooking the garden. Ace walked in and stood at the center. Her gaze moved slowly across the room. Is this where I stay? Yes, Ashbourne nodded. You don't need permission to touch anything. You don't need to ask to breathe. You live here now. This is your space. She didn't respond, but something in her eyes shifted. Barely noticeable, but it was there. Ashbourne stepped back toward the door. If you want to change anything, just tell me. It's your room, your call. He started to leave, then paused. Welcome to the family, Ace. She looked at him as he turned and walked away. Then, slowly, she turned back to her room and walked over to the window. She sat on the bed and stared out at the garden, silent but no longer entirely alone. The screen flickered dimly in Cadmus' secret headquarters. Amanda Waller sat stiffly before it, her face bathed in blue light as she delivered her report to her superiors. He wants to adopt her, Amanda said flatly, folding her hands. A chorus of disapproving voices erupted almost immediately. This is unacceptable. She's a government asset, not a stray to be picked up. He has no right to demand that. Prepare a tactical team to retrieve the girl. Amanda nodded once. Understood. She ended the call, face unreadable. She immediately dialed Ashbourne's private line. It rang once. You are calling late, some resistance. His voice came through smooth, casual. Yes, the adoption was refused, Amanda said without hesitation. They have decided to retrieve her. It's out of my hands. There was a pause. Names, Ashbourne said. Amanda hesitated only a moment, then listed them off. A dozen high-ranking officials. In her mind, she thought, this is it. Once he realizes the scale of who he's messing with, he'll drop this ridiculous game. But she underestimated him. Less than an hour later, Amanda's phone buzzed with an encrypted top priority message. An urgent meeting request. She joined the secure video call, expecting confidence and resolve. Instead, she was met with trembling, pale-faced men and women who couldn't look her in the eye. People who, mere hours ago, barked orders with superiority, now looked as if they'd seen death itself. We reconsidered, one stammered. Effective immediately, you are to comply with Mr. Black's request, another added. Full approval, a third whispered. Amanda ended the call in silence. She stared at the blank screen for a long moment, trying to understand what could he have done in less than an hour, she wondered. Whatever it was, it terrified people who didn't even flinch at alien invasions. Ashbourne might be more dangerous than Lex Luthor, she finally admitted to herself. That same night in Gotham, atop the roof of an old clock tower, Supergirl found her way to someone who would listen. Girl problems? Barbara asked as she sipped her hot cocoa, watching Kara land beside her. Kara nodded and dropped beside her with a sigh. Yeah, big ones. Barbara gave her a half-smile. Spill it. Kara hugged her knees. I heard Ashbourne and his assistant talking the other day. Ashbourne refused the idea of dating because he viewed it as a responsibility that takes time and effort. He told Rex he will take it seriously and do it to the best he can, and he doesn't want to do that now. I can respect that. But he went out of his way to adopt that strange and crazy girl, Ace. The girl that was with the Joker and nearly made millions become insane. Batgirl asked, surprised. She still has not received the news. Yes, that Ace. Supergirl answered, I saw her, she is a few years younger and seemed more alien than me. She is definitely not right in the mind. He made her his daughter. Can you believe that? Won't taking care of her take effort? Isn't it a greater responsibility? So why would he do that? I asked him again. You know, dating. He shot me down instantly. Barbara blinked. Wait, again? Kara? Why do you like that guy? He's an arrogant jerk. Kara smiled faintly. I thought so too. At first, but he's not. Not really. He's kind, genuinely kind. He takes care of people in his own strange way. He's funny, handsome, filthy rich, and scary smart. Barbara raised a brow. And he's the only person who ever treated me like a normal girl. It felt like he could understand me. That he didn't see me as alien, Kara continued softly. He seemed to understand what I was going through, what I was thinking. He just looked me in the eye and talked, and smiled when I badmouthed him. It just feels different. Barbara was quiet for a moment, then nudged her lightly. You really like that guy? Kara nodded. Yeah, I really do. Barbara said, I can't imagine him as a decent person. All I can see is an arrogant rich guy with a complete disregard for rules. A jerk even. He caused me a lot of trouble with my dad. When he realized I am Batgirl, he told my dad that he saw me with an older man and I was pretty close to him, that he should give me more time and talk with me. That caused me a lot of trouble, and Dad took a while before he stopped suspecting me. Kara laughed hearing that and asked, Is any of it true? Barbara rolled her eyes and said, He was talking about Bruce, and the relation was me being Batgirl, but he put it in a way that kept the truth hidden while ensuring it will cause me trouble with my dad. Yeah, I can totally see him doing something like that. Kara replied. In the watchtower, Earth's mightiest protectors gathered within the circular chamber overlooking the stars. Batman stood alone near the central console, arms folded, face unreadable beneath the cowl. The members of the Justice League arrived one after another. Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, and others, curiosity and concern written across their faces. No one knew why they'd been summoned. That in itself was cause for alarm. Batman waited until every chair was occupied, the last echoes of boots on steel fading. Only then did he speak. Igris, he began, projecting his voice so all could hear. The Black Knight who took down Doomsday and led an assault against the Thanagarians and Hawkgirl serves a figure known only as the Shadow Monarch. The atmosphere changed instantly. What had begun as curiosity turned into focused, tense attention. This Shadow Monarch commands not just Igris, but other knights, deadly, skilled, and loyal. Batman continued, And until now, we've had no information about this force. They operate in secret, they strike without warning, and they show no hesitation to kill. Every member knew of them, a hidden force on Earth, powerful enough to defeat Doomsday and decimate alien forces was no small matter. And worse, they were invisible, leaving no trace beyond the battlefield. Batman pressed a button, dimming the lights. I believe we have a lead on the Shadow Monarch. Everyone sat straighter. I believe they are connected to Ashbourne Black. Gasps and raised brows met that declaration. Wonder Woman frowned. Flash blinked and leaned forward, confused. Superman's face grew still. Batman didn't let the pause stretch too long. Ashbourne has displayed access to powerful magical items no one else could even trace. And every time we questioned him, he deflected or refused to reveal their origin. That alone is suspicious, but more concerning. Batman gestured again, and an image of Park during Ace's episode, completely and recognized and more of a fantasy show than a real Park. Yesterday, Ace's powers began warping reality. Ashbourne managed to bring those powers under control with something else. Something even we couldn't explain. And Ashbourne has shown awareness of the true identities of some of our members. I suspect he knows all of them. That is not a coincidence. He let the weight of his words sink in. I don't believe it's a stretch to say the name Shadow Corp and Shadow Monarch are connected. The League members looked to one another, processing the implications. The pattern was beginning to take shape. Odd behavior, strange connections, unexplained power, and the audacity to oppose them without fear. Still, not everyone was convinced. Batman's gaze turned cold. This isn't about him. It's about who he's working for. I believe Shadow Corp is the surface, and the Shadow Monarch is what lies beneath. Ashbourne is working for him, willingly or not, that is yet to be determined. Years ago, Batman narrated, Black Corp became Shadow Corp. The reason? The successive deaths of multiple Black family members, including Ashbourne's parents. Arthur Black gave a flimsy explanation for the name change. The wish of a grieving child, he said. He turned back to the table, voice sharp. I believe the Shadow Monarch orchestrated those murders to take control. And once Ashbourne came of age, Arthur Black was removed, disappeared without a trace. Ashbourne took the reins overnight. Superman's expression turned more serious as Batman pressed forward. Ashbourne's attitude, his fearlessness, his absolute confidence, is not natural. I believed it was the cause of trauma, but in the light of recent events, I don't think so anymore. He either fears a threat lurking in the shadows far greater than us, or he's protected by it. The screen faded to black, and then there's Ace. Batman leaned in. That girl has great power and could grow even more in the future. Suddenly, Ashbourne decides to adopt her without explanation. This isn't just a kind gesture. She might be a weapon or a key to something larger. A heavy silence gripped the room again. No one moved. The possibilities swirled like a storm, every connection more unsettling than the last. Finally, Superman spoke. What are you suggesting? Batman stood tall. We keep constant surveillance on Ashbourne. Track his every move. Uncover the truth. Identify the Shadow Monarch and what he's planning. The room shifted. Some heroes looked uneasy. Wonder Woman leaned forward, arms crossed. Green Lantern rubbed his temple. No, Superman said, at last, his voice calm but absolute. Batman narrowed his eyes. You'd let a possible threat move freely among us. We don't know that it's a threat, Superman replied. So far, the Shadow Knights have only helped us. They stepped in to expose and stop the Thanagarian plot. They stopped Doomsday. He looked around the room. If you're wrong, Bruce and you provoke them, we might start a war with an unknown enemy. One powerful enough to fight back and even win. You already pushed Ashbourne once, and that got you nowhere. If he really knows our identities, then we're exposing our families and friends to danger, Superman continued. You think that's worth it on a hunch? The risk is too great, Wonder Woman said softly. Egger's words made it clear. They protect the Earth from threats. If we move too aggressively, that might change. If they turn against us, Hal added, it won't just be us who suffers. Our homes, our people, our families. They left an impression, Flash muttered. A big one. I don't want those knights spawn in Iris's house. Batman stood motionless, surrounded by faces once ready to follow his every lead. But now they were doubtful and afraid of what lurked behind the shadows. Superman concluded, It's not worth the risk, Bruce. We wait, we watch, but we do not pick the fight. And the decision was made. For now, the League would remain still. The shadows would be left untouched. Rex sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, his fingers pinching the bridge of his nose. His eyes were bloodshot and heavy with exhaustion as he glanced at the figure beside him. "This is not going anywhere," he muttered with a sigh of frustration. Across from him, standing with arms folded and an amused expression on his face, Ashbourne responded coolly. "Look at the upside. Now if someone tries to bully her, she only needs to smile instead of making them go insane." Rex turned and gave him a tired side glance, unimpressed. Be serious, she needs to be able to mingle among her peers. Across from them, sitting perfectly upright, was Ace. She had been practicing how to smile for the last hour, and the result was unsettling. Her lips stretched in a mechanical curve, eyes wide and unblinking, the smile so stiff and forced that it looked less like joy and more like the prelude to a horror movie murder scene. Ashbourne tilted his head, thoughtful. "Okay, yeah, that's not quite it." He rubbed his chin, then suddenly said, "We get her a friend then, someone to help." Ace's murderous grin vanished immediately. "I will be fine alone," she said firmly, her tone as flat as her expression. Ashbourne met her gaze. "The whole idea of sending you to school is to experience life. If you remain alone, then what's the difference between that and what you've already lived through?" Ace's brows twitched slightly, but she said nothing. Her fingers fiddled with the hem of her black sleeve, unsure. Ashbourne stood and leaned back, his eyes drifting toward the ceiling for a few quiet seconds. Then, with a small smirk curling his lips, he turned to Rex. "Register Ace at Blue Valley High School." Rex blinked. "Blue Valley? That's not even the best school in Metropolis, and it's definitely not the closest." Ashbourne grinned, "But it is where Ace's first friend is going to be." Rex looked more confused than before. Meanwhile, Ace tilted her head. "Who's going to be my first friend?" she asked. Ashbourne's grin widened just a touch more. "An ex-supervillain's friend can only be a superhero." Sometime later, on the quiet outer edge of Metropolis, a small house sat tucked between tall trees and modest gardens. Inside, in the guest room, Ashbourne and Ace sat on one side of the living room couch. Across from them sat Courtney Whitemore, Barbara Whitmore, and Pat Dugan. Pat's expression was unreadable, but tense. Barbara offered a polite, if cautious, smile, while Courtney looked at them with narrowed eyes. Ashbourne gave them a nod of gratitude. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," he said. "I know this might be sudden, but I'm actually here looking for Courtney." "Me? Why?" Courtney asked with a frown. Barbara's polite smile faltered. Pat's eyes narrowed. "Why are you looking for Courtney?" he asked, suspicion lining every word. Ashbourne didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and gestured to the quiet, unblinking girl at his side. "This is my recently adopted daughter, Ace. I'm planning to enroll her in school." He waited a beat before continuing. "She's not very good at expressing herself, so I thought perhaps I'd ask for help, specifically Courtney's help." Barbara's eyes widened slightly. Pat's brow furrowed deeper. "I am not helping you or her," Courtney answered with narrowed eyes. Ashbourne's smile didn't falter as he continued calmly. "Ace's registration in Blue Valley High School is already in progress, and she'll be starting soon. I was hoping you could be her guide, her friend, to help her adjust." For a moment, no one spoke. Barbara and Pat exchanged a glance. They knew who Ashbourne was. Everyone did. His name had been whispered across headlines ever since the League's confrontation with him and Batman's public trial. Pat, his voice cautious and guarded, finally said, ignoring the fuming Courtney, "You've got a lot of history with the Justice League. With us. Why would you come here? Why would you ask her for help?" It was a fair question. After all, this wasn't just unexpected. It was almost surreal. Ashbourne leaned forward slightly, his tone calm but certain. "Because a hero is the best friend of a villain, especially an ex-villain, or because I want the best for my daughter. Choose the answer you like." Ace, sitting silently beside him, glanced up with something that almost looked like curiosity or maybe hope. Barbara and Pat didn't respond right away. "Don't bother. I am not going to help her, and that's final." Courtney folded her hands in complete refusal. If Ashbourne was upset by Courtney's blunt rejection, or even mildly disappointed, he didn't show a single flicker of it. That same calm, unreadable smile stayed perfectly in place as he said, "I guess I'll just have to pay the medical bills when the students at your school start going insane." Barbara's eyes widened slightly, and Pat straightened in his seat, his jaw tightening. Ashbourne, however, didn't give them the chance to respond. He gestured to the silent girl beside him. "She has quite the glass heart," he said lightly, "and things can spiral out of proportion quickly." That made the air shift. The atmosphere in the room, already tense, turned colder. Barbara's smile vanished entirely. Pat's hand twitched like he wanted to reach for something, and Courtney's arms tightened across her chest. But Ashbourne, he was entirely unbothered. He rose smoothly to his feet and turned to Ace. "When leaving someone else's house, we thank them for their hospitality," with a smile. Ace stared at him for a long second before standing and facing the trio. She tilted her head ever so slightly and smiled. The effect was immediate and bone-deep. Barbara's back stiffened. Pat blinked in alarm. Courtney's expression froze. If they hadn't heard what Ashbourne said earlier, they would have believed Ace's twisted grin was the opening act to a horror show, a threat in the form of polite etiquette. There was nothing warm in it, just eerie unblinking eyes and a chilling grinning expression, a horrifying sight to say the least. As Ashbourne and Ace stepped toward the door, Courtney suddenly spoke behind them. "Wait." They stopped. "I'll stay with her," Courtney said, her tone sharp, her fists clenched. "I'll keep her out of trouble as much as I can. That's it. I'm not going to be her friend." Ashbourne turned halfway, still wearing the same pleasant smile. "As expected of a noble hero," he said with a small bow of his head. "Your heart's in the right place. I leave Ace in your care then." And with that, he walked out, Ace trailing silently behind him. Once the door closed, Courtney turned on her heels with a face full of anger. "Can you believe the audacity of that guy? He basically used my school as leverage. I should have blasted him a few days ago when I had the chance." Pat let out a heavy sigh and nodded. "You're not wrong. Be careful around him, and especially around her. That girl, Ace, she's dangerous. Her powers aren't a joke. We should inform the League. Maybe they'll have a better idea of what we're dealing with." Outside, Ashbourne and Ace stepped into his sleek black car, the engine already humming softly as they pulled away from the house. "Not bad, we got you a potential new friend," Ashbourne said as he steered them into the quiet evening road. Ace, arms rested on her legs and staring ahead unblinkingly, corrected him. "You blackmailed her. She doesn't want to be my friend," Ashbourne replied with a smile. "People become friends because of all kinds of things like circumstances, benefits, shared goals. Sometimes just spending enough time together and making memories is enough. Courtney's angry and she hates me, not you. That may change over time. It all depends on how sincere you are and the experiences you two end up sharing." Ace glanced out the window, her eyes flicking to her reflection, thoughtful. "What if she still wants nothing to do with me?" she asked quietly. "Then that's just life," Ashbourne replied. "Friends or enemies, they're part of the social life we lead. Regardless of the outcome, you'll have lived through something new, something normal." There was silence in the car for a moment. Then Ash looked over at him and smiled. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it wasn't terrifying either. It was awkward, a little crooked, but it was hers. And she was trying. "Thank you," she said softly. Ashbourne returned her smile. "You're welcome. And by the way, your smiling skill is improving. You might soon be able to smile without scaring Grandpa Rex." Ace nodded slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of her sleeve. One small, shaky step toward a normal life. Early morning sunlight filtered through the trees that bordered Blue Valley High, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Ace stood in front of the school's main gate, her back straight, arms at her sides, and her wide, unblinking eyes fixed on the building. Next to her, Courtney Whitmore stood with crossed arms and a scowl etched on her face. The stiffness in her shoulders betrayed how utterly annoyed she was by the current situation. Behind them, wearing his usual calm and cheerful smile, was Ashbourne. "Courtney," he said, the smile never wavering. "Just a reminder, Ace is in your care." Courtney didn't reply. She just glared at him before turning toward the school. "Let's go," she muttered, and began walking forward. Ace silently followed, her footsteps light and measured. "Have fun," Ashbourne called out cheerfully behind them, then turned and walked away without a care in the world. As the two girls walked across the school grounds, students began to notice them. Some waved and greeted Courtney, but their eyes quickly drifted to the strange girl beside her. Ace's unblinking gaze and her wide eyes drew attention like a magnet. Whispers followed in their wake. Courtney leaned in slightly and muttered under her breath, "No powers inside the school. Got it." Ace didn't respond but remained beside her. Courtney sighed and continued the informal tour, showing her the sports field, the playground, the swimming pool, and several of the student hubs and hangout spots. Her voice remained curt, serious, no warmth, no friendliness. When the bell for first period rang, Courtney led Ace to her assigned classroom. She stopped at the door, glancing back at her one last time. "I've got my own class. Just remember what I said. No powers." Ace nodded slowly, unblinking. "Thanks." Courtney didn't say anything else and turned away. Ace stepped inside the room. Every head turned. The students stared, some whispering, others blinking in confusion, and Ace. She simply stared right back. She remained there for a moment before speaking in her monotone voice. "I am Ace Black. Where can I sit?" The teacher, an elderly woman with short gray curls and round glasses, blinked in surprise before nodding. "Ah yes, you must be the transfer student. Welcome." She gestured toward an empty seat in the middle row. Ace walked to the desk and sat down without a word. The murmurs in the room never stopped. The first class passed without incident, at least on the surface. The students kept sneaking glances at her. Some whispered behind their hands. Some couldn't stop staring at her wide, unblinking eyes, and some were thinking back to a certain Joker show, their expressions turning increasingly uneasy. The name, the look, the stare. After class ended, a few curious students approached her. "Hey, I'm Jason. Why don't you blink?" one asked. "I've always been like this," Ace replied plainly. Another student chimed in. You kind of look like that girl from the Joker show. You know, that Ace say, "Same name and all. That ever cause you trouble?" Ace turned her head slowly toward him. "I am that Ace." And no, it did not. The response hit them like a bombshell. The students stepped back immediately. Some paled visibly, others looked horrified. "You're her?" Someone whispered. "The villain?" The panic escalated quickly. Students scattered, some running for the teachers, others dashing into nearby classrooms to spread the word. Whispers turned into rumors. Rumors turned into declarations of alarm. By the time the second class had even begun, every single student and staff member in the school knew who Ace Black was, and panic spread like wildfire. Students avoided the hallway she walked through. Teachers glanced at one another with concerned expressions. Some students cried. Others hid behind lockers or peeked around corners like they were avoiding a ticking time bomb. Courtney, hearing the uproar from across the hall, pressed a hand to her forehead and groaned. Her last year of high school was officially going to be more hectic than anything she'd ever imagined. The cafeteria was alive with noise, chatter, laughter, and the clatter of trays until the moment Ace walked through the doors. Every student turned toward her, eyes widened, forks froze midair, and conversations died instantly. The mix of fear and curiosity in their expressions was clear. Ace didn't flinch. She didn't slow. Her face remained blank as ever. She simply walked toward the canteen line, her wide, unblinking eyes fixed forward. The students ahead of her looked once, then quickly backed away, almost tripping over themselves to clear a path. Unbothered, Ace grabbed a tray, took her time picking out her food, then turned to scan the tables. Everywhere her gaze landed, students either paled, flinched, or looked down at their trays in panic. No one dared meet her eyes. From a nearby table, Courtney sat surrounded by her friends, her eyes locked on Ace. She didn't say a word at first, but after a moment she sighed, grabbed her tray, and stood up. "Courtney, where are you going?" one of her friends asked nervously. Courtney ignored them. She walked across the cafeteria and sat directly across from Ace, wearing a forced, clearly fake smile. "So," she said, voice low, "what do you think you're doing? I heard you actually admitted you were the Ace, the Joker's Ace. Why the hell would you say that?" Ace paused mid-bite and answered plainly, "My father said if I want to make friends, I should be sincere and share things about myself. I didn't lie to them." Courtney blinked. For a moment, she was speechless. Then she scowled and cursed Ashbourne in her head. What kind of messed up advice is that? Before she could say anything more, several of her friends approached hesitantly. "Courtney," one of them called, "what are you doing sitting with her? She's a villain. Dangerous." Courtney glanced at Ace, then back at her friends. There was a brief moment of hesitation. Then she said, "She's not evil, just a little strange." The girls didn't look convinced. But one by one, they slowly came closer and cautiously sat down with them. One girl, visibly shaking, muttered, "We're not leaving you alone next to her." Courtney felt something stir in her chest. She looked at her friends with mild surprise and maybe even a little appreciation. S, meanwhile, absorbed their words and actions with her usual stillness. Then she asked, "Do friends stand for each other always, even when afraid?" The question caught them off guard. Courtney blinked, then said, "Friends help each other. That's what matters." Ace nodded slowly. "I will keep that in mind." One girl tilted her head. "You talk like friendship is a foreign thing. Don't villains have friends?" Ace looked at her. "The base I was raised in never introduced the concept of friendship." That answer shifted the mood. The girls exchanged glances, their fears slightly replaced by curiosity. They remembered the brief glimpse of Ace from the Joker's Twisted Show. A chilling girl with power in her eyes and madness in her stare. But what kind of life created someone like this? Courtney couldn't stop herself from asking, "What was your life like before you met the Joker?" Without any emotion, Ace began to speak. She described her early years, the conditions she lived in, the training, the experiments, the games she was forced to play. She spoke of people who treated her like a tool or a weapon, of days without sunlight and nights without dreams. She didn't cry, she didn't frown, she didn't smile. It was like listening to a robot recite someone else's nightmares. The girls were stunned, Courtney's lips pressed into a thin line. Even she, who had seen a lot, felt pity. "I heard from the teachers," another girl said hesitantly, "that you were adopted by Ashbourne Black, the rich guy who beat up Batman. How did you meet him? Why would he adopt you?" Ace replied calmly, "He heard about me from one of his contacts by coincidence. Since my life greatly resembled his, he came to help me and took me in." That answer sparked a wave of surprise. Even Courtney looked stunned. "Wait, what?" she asked. "Did he tell you that? He must be lying. Ashbourne Black was born rich. He doesn't have powers. How could his life be anything like yours?" Ace looked straight at her. "I saw his memories, the life he lived until this point. It was much worse than mine." Courtney stared, jaw slightly slack. She couldn't believe what she just heard or what to say. Within the walls of Shadow Corp's upper tower, Ashbourne sat at his desk, elbows resting on the surface, fingers steepled before his mouth. His usual smile tugged faintly at his lips, as his focus not on the room but elsewhere, through the shadows cast across Blue Valley school halls, cafeteria, and classrooms. He had watched Ace's first day. Her first day hadn't exactly been normal. How could it be? But it was progress. A great start, he mused, especially considering where she began. Across from him, Rex sat rigidly in one of the leather chairs, his face filled with restrained agitation. He was now filled with worry, and for once, it was not for Ashbourne's safety. "Do you think she's doing okay?" Rex finally asked, voice tight. "What if she was bullied?" mocked. "You know how kids are. You just threw her into that place." Ashbourne's eyes shifted toward him, amusement flickering across his face. "Relax," he said smoothly. "She is doing well, and who could possibly bully her?" Rex's eyes narrowed. "Don't tell me to relax. You adopted her. That's not just some game, Ashbourne. You have a responsibility now. A responsibility to her. She's not ready for normal life. You know that. We both know that. And you're just sitting here smiling like an idiot." Ashbourne didn't flinch. He tilted his head slightly, almost like he was studying Rex. The outburst didn't rattle him. In fact, it made him smile a bit more. "She wasn't ready," Ashbourne said quietly, "but she needed it. It won't be perfect. It will hurt. But that's part of learning how to live." Rex scowled and said, "You always do this. Act like you know what is going on. How everything will play out. What if something goes wrong? Huh? What if she snaps? What if someone pushes her too far?" Ashbourne leaned back in his chair. Rex wasn't wrong, and while Ace had made some progress, there were certain things that still needed boundaries. In his mind, a quiet note etched itself into his mental list. Talk to Ace again. Explain to her what can and can't be shared in more detail. What can't be shared is not limited to his shadows or his past life. His expression shifted slightly, less smile, more purpose. "Don't worry, I am taking this seriously," he said. Rex huffed, not fully satisfied, but recognizing the seriousness in Ashbourne's voice. "Good, she needs guidance. If you're going to be her father, then be a proper one.